hard in the research session not to say everything I was going to say during the keynote. I'm really thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I unfortunately wasn't able to come until today because my flight had been delayed because of the fires in California. But the silver lining of my delay is that I was actually able to watch Dr. English's talk via the live stream. So I decided to build a little bit on her themes moving in today. So I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. This is probably our most famous bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. It's beautiful. There's a second bridge that is actually a little closer to my heart. So this is the Bay Bridge. This is the bridge that connects the East Bay, Berkeley, Oakland with San Francisco. And every time I travel this bridge, I feel like I'm sort of entering a new world. So I work in Berkeley, I live in Oakland. There is a very distinct culture about the East Bay, right? They're interested in social justice, kind of laid back, there are Birkenstocks, very diverse, lots of languages spoken. When you move over to San Francisco, there's a different kind of language spoken, a different kind of culture. So people talk about disruption, people talk about venture capital. They say different things, they value different things. And when I go there, I feel like I'm part of the community, but I don't feel like I'm part of the community in the same way that I feel like I'm part of this community. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to use this bridge metaphor for talking about computation. I'm interested in how computation can serve as a bridge to new mathematical cultures. So, and this is about connecting to knowledge and experiences we have, languages that we use, but also values. What do we value in mathematics? What is it we're trying to do in mathematics? And then how do we see ourselves in relationship to the mathematical community? So in general, the plan for today is going to be sort of a brief but deep dive into a history of the relationship between computational thinking and mathematics. And I'm going to argue that beyond computational thinking, a lot of this work is interested in computer math cultures more broadly. Cultures including things like the language people use, the values they have, how they participate with one another in doing mathematics. And so I'm going to argue that moving beyond thinking, it's important to think about computational expression, structuring knowledge and sharing knowledge in new ways. And I saw a lot of this in the posters today. I loved your poster about the ethnocomputation. So I'm hoping that this connects with people and I'm interested in talking more about it. Then I'm going to move into my own work, which is interested in what we might call new computer math cultures. So things like simulation, visualization, data analysis as new ways that people are doing new kinds of math with computers. And show a few examples of how I'm trying to engage learners in those same experiences. And then I'll briefly talk about moving forward, but I'm hoping you will all push me to move forward in new ways with your questions. So let's step back to this brief history of computational thinking and mathematics. And of course, this is sort of the natural place to go, is Mindstorms and Seymour Papert. And I pulled a specific quote from this. He said, "The metaphor of computer as a mathematics-speaking entity pulls the learner into a qualitatively new kind of relationship to an important domain of knowledge." So I kind of think this is the bridge into a new way of thinking about mathematics, a new relationship to mathematics. And later he says, he had become sensitive to the way in which materials like computation, from the very young computer cultures that were allowing psychologists to develop new ways of to think about thinking, could influence how students thought about their own thinking. So my entry into the world of computers was motivated largely by the idea that children could also benefit, perhaps even more than psychologists, from the way in which computer models seemed to be able to give concrete form to areas of knowledge that had previously appeared so intangible and abstract. And so, while this certainly involves computational thinking, it seems to involve a lot more than that. It involves computational cultures, ways of making sense. And so I wanted to go into a few early examples of that, and I think everyone in this room probably knows them, but I'd like to revisit them and sort of think about them. So example one is logo. Everyone, I'm sure. I actually did logo in school. So when we think about logo, let's say we want to draw an equilateral triangle. If I'm a turtle, of course I'm going to move forward first, but then what do I do next? Does anyone remember? Right, 90? Oh, I'm drawing an equilateral triangle. Oh, yeah. Sorry, that was just, I should have took the triangle.
120.
120, yeah. And so that's interesting because usually when I think of equilateral triangles, as someone who is trained in Euclidean geometry, I think of that interior angle being 60, not 120. So I have a fundamentally different way of thinking about angles in order to do mathematics using logo versus using Euclidean geometry. Oh, I was supposed to go to there.
So that's why I said right 90%.
Yeah, yes. I forgot how many slides I had. And so this is the idea of new relationships to, at times, the same content. So we're basing geometry not on our external view of a Euclidean space, but instead, what does this robot, what does this turtle, what do I as a child need to do to draw a triangle? And it's fundamentally different, but it connects to the content in a new way. And Papert talks about how this allows students who maybe don't see themselves as competent in mathematics to suddenly become experts at doing mathematical things. And DeSessa and Abelson actually showed that you can do very rigorous mathematics using turtle geometry. So it's an entirely new culture around geometry that's just this bridge through Logo. A second example is Andy DeSessa's work with boxers. So whereas Logo focused on the child sort of as the center, DeSessa was really interested in the structure of programming. So when we think about recursion, we can literally think about boxes inside of other boxes as a data structure. So how is data taken and passed on and manipulated within a program? And he turned that into a visual metaphor, so a new way to think about programming that's not text-based, but graphically based. And my own advisor, Marie Walensky, looked at NetLogo, so the ways of programming multiple agents to create mathematical patterns. So does anyone recognize this mathematical structure or model? I'm seeing some nods. It's the Lotka-Volterra equations. Does anyone remember those? Do you want to share them with the group? No? No one? Okay, that's all right. How about this? Let's think about a predator and some prey. What happens in a system when we think of wolves and sheep living together? What are things we would expect to happen? Anyone?
Things I played with the net logos.
Yeah. I heard a few other.
Wolves eat the sheep.
Wolves are going to eat the sheep, right? And so the idea behind NetLogo is that we don't need to know the Lotka-Volterra equations to model this relationship. We know wolves eat sheep, and we know wolves and sheep sort of putter around some space. And so we can program the wolves and the sheep. We don't have to program the mathematics. And once we program the wolves and sheep, I think this runs, then we can say, okay, computer, show me what's supposed to happen.
And the grass.
And yeah, we add some grass here. We can add other things to the environment. But computer, show me what happens. And this does not look like Lotka-Volterra in many ways. But if we wait a little bit, we wait for things to sort of stabilize. Maybe I should have sped this video up. Oh, here we go. We start to see some of the most important features of Lotka-Volterra being reproduced. We have this oscillatory, right, dynamic relationship, this equilibrium. And so here, again, we're accessing the mathematics, but using very different knowledge. We know how wolves and sheep interact, and that gives us Lotka-Volterra. We don't have to start with the differential equations. And it's not exactly the same thing, but it gets at some of the same territory. It's this bridge into the future. And so again, I would argue that these are all examples of computational thinking, new ways to think, but also moving beyond that to think about new ways to participate, to communicate with one another, to do mathematics in new ways, see ourselves as new kinds of mathematicians. And there's a lot of literature that makes this argument. I wanted to point out a few of my favorites. So Noss and Hoyles talk about computers and learning cultures as windows on mathematical thinking. So different ways to think about what it is to think mathematically using computers, and specifically cultures of computing. DeSessa talks about computational literacy. So it's about reading, it's about writing, it's about sharing. Walensky and Papert call this the restructuration of disciplines. So computing gives us whole new ways to think about the Lotka-Volterra equations or other things that we might currently just think about as living within one specific mathematical paradigm. And more recently, Yasmin Kafai has talked about computational participation, so ways for students to participate with one another and to participate in communities of practice through computation. Again, that bridge to a new space. And so, what's different now? So this started, in the 70s and has been going on. So what's different now, and why has computational thinking become more popular? And I'd argue it's because these new computer cultures are becoming visible in our everyday life. They're becoming visible in professional practice in ways that might not have been as visible before. So I work at the University of California at Berkeley. We have a whole new division dedicated to data sciences. So a division is like a whole new school, right? It has a dean. This is just a new structure within the university that's defined by computationally working with numbers. We have new ways of analyzing social networks. We have new ways of doing marketing. They're all driven by computation. The disciplines and entire fields are driven by computation. So climate science is a very computationally driven field. Computational biology. And not only are these cultures becoming pervasive in scientific and professional life, but they're also becoming pervasive in everyday life. So again, I'm from California. We went through a very severe drought. And this is a visualization of the drought that became quite popular. So you saw it in news articles. Teachers are using it in classrooms. It's recommended for grades 5 through 8. It's a very intense data visualization. And this is an article from the New York Times. It shows you the average global temperature per month, per year, for about 100 years. It's using this representation called a climate spiral. It's a little scary to watch. But so I'm doing all this to argue that this is all computational culture that we're engaging with on a day-to-day basis. And we're also seeing, as a lot of people have talked about, and here I have mostly the US curriculum, but of course it's an international movement, computing finally sort of being integrated at the curricular level. And so how do we help students prepare for these computational cultures? And again, thinking about knowledge and language, but also values and community. So what we've been doing in my lab is developing computational sort of tools to scaffold students' use of computational representation, so ways to speak using these new ways of representing things. And usually we start, informed by constructionism, with student-generated objects. And we try to start with student-generated objects that are based in familiar practices, so things like sketching, or flipbook animation, or storytelling. And then instrument that so that it becomes a digital artifact, something that's programmable, something that looks sort of like the scientific and mathematical tools that we see out there in the world.